So, for the record, a warm welcome to this last in the series of the Digital Preservation Futures series for 2018. This has been a new adventure for us this year. I think it's gone very well, and we'll take an opportunity to reflect on that towards the end of this presentation. In the first sort of section of this series, we got short presentations and discussion from each of the DPC's supporters, which was Matthew from Archive, and welcome back, Matthew, on this call, but also from MirrorWeb and from Preservica. We then rolled forward into the DPC Unconference, Connecting the Bits, which was followed by the Digital Futures kind of face-to-face workshop for those who were able to come to that in Glasgow. And then last week we had a brief sort of reprise, I was going to say rehearsal, more of a recap on that by inviting everyone back online. And that was really aimed for people who couldn't attend for the face-to-face event for the audience for DPC around the world. I know for sure that Sharon Smith from Library and Archives Canada, for example, has been kind of watching, and various others, Jay Weatherburn and others, have been contributing to the discussion as we go. So this is a good way of us reaching out to that wider audience. In this final part of the series, we want to just reflect on the recommendations which we've received at the DPC from members and present that back out to you now then as not so much as a sort of set of recommendations, but rather now more as a plan for the future, which will shortly be installed into the DPC's annual prospectus, and will therefore action stations now for us to get all of these activities up and running for the year. So the title really of the webinar, You Said We Did, pretty much sums it up. It's feedback from the DPC members on Conference Connecting the Bits, talking about our plans for the coming year. So that's really what I kind of want to do, and Sarah's already given much by way of introduction, so let me really kind of roll on. So the Unconference had its usual framework of introductions, an icebreaker, and then we had a series of breakout groups where there was no set list of breakout groups. There was a kind of blank sheet of paper, and we wanted to hear from people what they wanted to discuss in the workshop session. And we ended up with 10 individual sets of discussions going on. Some of them are old favourites, returning several times over in the history of the DPC, and some of them are new. So let's just kind of pick them up one by one. We had another conversation, a good conversation around email preservation issues. That's been a well worked topic for the DPC, but of course it remains a very active concern for our members and presents really every kind of possible combination of digital preservation complexities. We do have a new Tech Watch report coming out on email preservation. We have also had not one but two briefing days in the last year on that topic. So it's interesting to see the issues still there and still strong. And if I may add a moment of as it were of a plea, we are looking for good case studies around email preservation. So if you know of any, or you're willing to put us in touch with someone, or indeed you've led one yourself, do let us know. We had a very lively discussion from a number of DPC members who have, they've received their first tranche of funding. They have been given permission to start digital preservation, in some cases now reaching the end of that pilot phase, but realise now that even procuring a system is only the start. From a pilot phase into an implementation, making digital preservation business as usual, it turns out to be another hurdle for those organisations. So we had a lively conversation about that. And it's interesting to reflect on the history of the Connecting the Bits. A few years ago, there simply weren't any pilots to discuss. So there's some evidence here, I think, of the maturing of the community. We had a lively discussion around moving images and the preservation of moving images. partly represented, I think, by the selection of people in the room. But there's going to be news on that later, and that's certainly something we're about to return to. We had an open discussion about a DPC perennial about training and skills, and also another returning perennial certification and maturity, and we'll reflect on those more in a few minutes with some practical plans. I think the theme that, if I may, surprised me but made maybe a welcome return after maybe 10 years or more was a desire to have a new conversation, a newly engaged conversation again around the issues of digital preservation in the context of digitization. I honestly thought that everything that needed to be said on that subject had already been said in, maybe around 2005 to 2010. There were indeed many sources of advice available at that point around, for example, New Opportunities Fund digitisation, UCOLM, MLA, a range of different agencies funding digitisation, providing digital preservation advice. But two things have happened. Firstly, those agencies, in many cases, simply no longer exist. And secondly, the methods of digitisation are way different from how they were a decade ago. So actually, we return, therefore, to update around digital preservation and digitisation. We had a lively discussion around resources, which took a different turn. It wasn't about how much does digital preservation cost, or even how the benefits, if you like, of digital preservation and the kind of economic outcomes at the other side. Rather, it was about how do we monetize collections? Can we really come good on the claim of digital materials as digital assets? And if they're assets, what does that mean in the context of an organization's kind of bottom line, the organization's own kind of asset register? And finally, we had a lively discussion around secure data transfer, partly, I think, encouraged around the GDPR issue that we've all been addressing in the last 12 months. Also, though, with a heightened sense of cyber security and the issues around perhaps coming out of things like the Allen Review maybe a couple of years ago now, where it's become obvious that issues to do with sensitivity review present a significant challenge to archives who are receiving collections from outside their own organisation or across institutional boundaries, and how then do we ensure safe and secure data transfer. Anyway, that was the lively discussions, and we sort of sit and listen, and there's a nice shot here of me actually making notes while Tuan and Irvi were discussing various opportunities and things the DPC could be doing for them. Let's move on then and look at what we'd like to do in terms of some plans for the year ahead. So I'm going to talk very broadly around this, and then we're going to drill into some very specific actions in a few moments. So obviously, it seems to me that there are a variety of areas where the DPC can work really effectively, and other areas where it's probably best for the DPC to step back and let others who are expert in a variety of different ways do the work. And it's those links with specialist networks for advice and guidance that we think really matter. We did a little bit of a review of advice around, for example, digitization, previously mentioned as a theme. Actually, it seems to us that the place to go for that digitization advice, it has changed over the years, but there is still, and as far as we can tell, still in very good health, the Impact Centre. So our target then has to be to make sure we're connecting with, for example, in the context of digital or digitization, we're connecting with the Impact Centre. But the same is true for other perennial DPC issues. I'm thinking of web archiving, especially in the context of IIPC, and we do have a framework now of work which will come back in a few minutes to really get engaged better with IIPC. And surprising to me, we don't have a memorandum of understanding or a friendship agreement with IIPC. It's probably time that we did. And secondly, or thirdly rather, on this list to think about the work we could be doing around the IIIF, and that connects us then back to the digitisation themes. So signposting the best advice from others remains a kind of core piece of the DPC mission, and making sure our members are signposted and can find those materials as we go. Obviously, the plans for 2018-19 will include a range of training subjects. And so, for example, last year we obviously ran a set of training workshops, and Sharon will reflect on that in a few minutes. But we also added a specialist training event around advocacy, and we're going to return to that as well. We've been asked in a variety of different contexts to support a robust networks between members. Can we facilitate exchange? And I think we had a penny drop moment at the unconference as to how we might do that. So in a few minutes I'm going to describe what that will be like, and fairly shortly thereafter there's going to be a call for suggestions, a call for names for people who'd like to join one of these little support networks that we're intending to set up. There will be, of course, briefing days on specialist subjects, DPC Perennial, but new for this year, we're going to maybe, instead of thinking about Tech Watch reports, although Tech Watch reports will remain active, we're going to look at maybe a different layer of advice, guidance notes in a variety of forms, which provide explicit material advice around, the 10 to 20 ongoing, continuing challenges in digital preservation, really accessible, really lightweight advice. And we've actually got a suite of those already in place, ready to launch. We've got more we can now do. And all of that points also to a sense, partly picking up the network between members, to look at ways in which the DPC provides, well, we said here new formats for discussion, but Sarah Higgins at the Connecting the Bits at the Unconference put it more succinctly, and saying that what we need is DPC 2.0. Instead of the DPC providing access to resources, it's really about the DPC facilitating dialogue between members, and that mediation. Instead of DPC being the kind of the source of advice, DPC being the forum through which advice is passed, is quite a compelling vision really for the DPC for the future. So that is a very quick outline of the DPC plans for the year. I'm going to skip on to item 4, the fourth slide. I think this is one where I hand over to Sharon to talk us through the theme. Some returning favourites, Sharon, and some of the things here which you have been working on for a few years. Do you want to just update us on, for example, the roadshows, the student conference and so forth?
Yep, sure, certainly will, William. Excuse me in advance if I'm a little bit croaky. I've not been very well the last couple of weeks. But on to the subject of returning favourites. So first up there we have, as William's already mentioned, the Getting Started and Making Progress roadshows. They remain popular and the feedback from them is really good. So we plan to kind of continue as is with those workshops in terms of plans to have 3 each a year. Getting Started usually happens in springtime, Making Progress kind of late autumn time. We did review the content of those about 2 years ago, and we had a kind of big makeover at that point. And we'll probably look to do another kind of little refresh of them after the Making Progress events this year. What I wish I knew, the student conference is again always a really successful event. And we'll be looking to kind of expand that success in the future. I'll actually talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. But we want to kind of build on the success of that in previous years. So we're going to be keeping that going. We're also looking to do more of our Digital Preservationist Anonymous events. So we've had one of those already, and we've got one scheduled for next week ahead of the next briefing day that we have on. And these are really great little events that we hold around these briefing days to get members together in a kind of safe environment, although I kind of hate that term, to talk about the challenges and problems that they've had in digital preservation and how they've overcome them, and also give them the chance for kind of support and advice from their peers. I think the people who attended the first one of those in London a while back would really say that that was a great event and they got quite a lot out of it. So we're hoping that we'll have more of those and kind of take them on the road with us as well wherever we go, because it's quite a mobile little event, so it's something that we can probably do attached to kind of conferences and other events too. We'll also obviously be keeping up with our Connecting the Bits and Digital Futures events. Both were incredibly successful this year. I'm sad to say that I only got to attend half of Connecting the Bits, but just seeing the huge amount of information and kind of feedback we had from them, it seems that they were great success. So we'll be looking to have them again in June next year. We'll be continuing with the leadership programme and offering the training scholarships. Up to this date, they've really been us kind of pushing out calls for applications from our members. But starting with the new DPC year in August, we'll be actively asking members to bring suggestions for training that they would like to do to us that we can sponsor them for, and also more kind of direct sponsorship of things like if you have a paper accepted or a poster accepted for a conference but aren't sure that you're going to be able to raise the travel funds to be able to go, then we want to be there to support our members in doing those kind of development activities. Our webinars series will continue on. We've got some interesting webinars coming up soon on legal issues around digital preservation. We'll be continuing these kind of short series of webinars on specific topics. And then finally, we've got 3 Technology Watch reports that we're looking forward to in the next year. William already mentioned the Preserving Email Tech Watch report, that is kind of in its final phases of writing and development at the moment. So look out for that coming soon. We're also looking to do an update of our Preserving Digital Sound and Vision Technology Watch report, which has been a topic that we've heard a lot from our members that they're really interested in learning more about. That'll be coming in the new year. And then also something on software preservation and emulation, which is again another kind of hot topic that we've heard people talking about quite a lot. On to the next slide now, I think, please, William.
Oh, there we go.
Thanks, William. So I'm also going to talk a little bit about the briefing days that we've got coming up. So as William said, these are continuing on, one of our kind of perennial favourites amongst DPC members. So the first one that we've got coming up in the new DPC year is Museums and Digital Memory, from Creation and Curation to Digital Preservation. And this is a joint event with the British Museum. It's a one-day conference bringing together digital preservation experts with people from the museums community that has perhaps not kind of engaged with digital preservation in the way that some of the other kind of disciplines have to date. So we're really looking forward to that event and getting some of the DPC good work out there to the museums community. Next up, kind of going hand in hand with the Technology Watch report that was mentioned in the previous slide, we'll be looking to have a Preserving Digital Sound and Vision event in autumn. And I think this is going to be one of the briefing days that's maybe not quite the completely traditional format. We'll have a little bit more kind of workshopy aspect to it. So we want to make sure that the briefing days, while they remain popular, they remain useful and fresh at the same time. So we'll be making sure that the structure for each of the briefing days remains kind of relevant and useful to the members. Next up, we have another event on advocacy for digital preservation early in 2019. This will be building on the training events that we had towards the end of 2017 and bringing through some of the messages from that and bringing out some more kind of great presentations on advocacy for digital preservation and some more kind of information about how to do advocacy within your organisation. After that, we have Curating and Preserving Virtual Reality, which will be an event held jointly with the University of Arts London in 19th of March 2019. That's going to be a kind of a really interesting kind of cutting edge event, hopefully looking at a topic that we've not really examined in much detail before. And next up, we've got Personal Web and Social Media Archiving in April 2019. This is partly building on the Web Archiving Task Force, which is happening today in Dublin, but also on a project that Sarah Day Thompson is looking at on preserving blogs, particularly of the more kind of personal variety. And then finally, we've got an event that will hopefully be led by our new member of staff when they come on board. This is a specific outcome of that project. So it will be a briefing day looking at digital preservation policy and guidance, which will happen probably around May 2019. So again, something that's been of great interest to our members, and hopefully a result of the extra capacity we'll have from our new member of staff. Moving on to the next slide, I think I'm handing back to William now.
There we are. It helps if I unmute the microphone. New things. There are new things 2018-19 that we're going to introduce. And I think this is a free-for-all, this slide. So I'll start, and then I think we hand to Sharon and Sarah respectively. So the first thing to note is we have a new member of staff starting. We have a strategic ambition around standards and good practice. And consequently, we have a new member of staff picking up whose job it's going to be to look after that strand of work for us. They're going to be doing a 2-year project with the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, developing good practice and standards for that sector, but also drawing on the expertise we have and then reflecting back out of some of the policy development and work that they do. So that's a big step for us, and that's going to take up quite a bit of my time in the first instance to develop the new member of staff. We're also going to introduce a new function to the coalition, common purpose groups. So we've talked around the idea in the past around a sort of a buddy network for DPC members, and we've never really got to the bottom of how we would do it. We have been doing quite a bit of research, and actually Chris Fryer gave us some very good pointers around for example, civil service staff development. And we've also been doing a bit of research of our own around peer-to-peer networks for professional development. So what we're going to do is introduce, well, we're calling them for the time being, common purpose groups, little peer-to-peer groups for DPC members, groups of around 12 people. And the theory would be that every group has 12 members, they generate their own agenda, and they take a kind of monthly meeting through the year. Every meeting chaired by a different member who is entitled and empowered to really ask any question, to bring any topic to the table, to reflect in any way upon their digital preservation experience. We're going to be attempt to be quite robust and make sure that people come from diverse backgrounds into these groups and that people can bring really anything to the table. If we can make this work, and by the way, we're quite able to put a little bit of travel money or web resources or whatever is required into setting these up, we're going to reflect on that experience, and hopefully the 12 founding members of the Common Purpose Network will then, hopefully in a year's time, roll out to 12 times 12 membership of these groups. So quite an interesting initiative there, and I'm keen to encourage, there will be a call for members into that network quite soon.
Can I? Sorry.
This space.
I was going to say, can I add something to that as well? The way you've described it, it sounds very structured, and it's obviously very good to have a structure around a network like this. But we also want the members of the network to be kind of informally available to one another, and that's one of the reasons why the group would be kind of larger than just a one-on-one kind of situation, so that in the event of a digital preservation emergency, I can't think of one off the top of my head, but a member of the group would have a network of more than one person who may not necessarily be available to call on to ask for advice, and they would reciprocate, hopefully, with advice and guidance if ever it was needed from another member of the group. So just wanted to add that before you leapt on to the next point.
Yeah. No, that's entirely right, entirely fair. They are agendaless in that sense. There'll be a structure, but they will be completely open in terms of topic. So they'll hopefully provide that sort of peer support, maybe a bit of peer review, maybe thematic things will just emerge naturally out of those discussions. But a really, hopefully, really supportive peer-to-peer networks set up for DPC members. I'm going to hand on to Sharon to talk about the student conference. Sharon, do you want to tell us your plans there? Because I think that's quite an exciting development.
So as trailed before, we're looking at doing a bit of a change to the way that we want to run the student conference. So obviously the DPC membership is growing greatly over the last few years. And one of the particular groups that's grown quite a lot are university courses, particularly that are providing training for sort of future information managers, be it in libraries and archives or in other kind of related fields. So we've gone up to nearly 10 members now, which is a significant portion of the DPC membership who are offering these types of master courses. So we've been running the student conference for I think 7 years now, and it's gone from being a half day to a full day, and it's been a consistently successful event with kind of growing audiences, almost always a sellout every year, and really great feedback. But we're quite keen now to kind of make sure that its reach is broader. So we're planning to, very much like getting started and making progress, and we're going to take it on the road to make sure that we're reaching more of the students of the various different institutions that are members of the DPC. Now, it is quite an expensive event to put on in its current format, so we've decided that as well as the shake-up of taking it on the road, we're going to reduce the length of the event a little bit to make it a little bit cheaper to put on so that we can take it out. But we're hopeful it will still manage to keep a lot of the kind of great content and enthusiasm that goes along with it. Bringing forward kind of messages about what digital preservation is, why it's important, but also what it's really like to work in the digital preservation field. So we're thinking about taking that. We'll continue to have an event in London, probably a kind of half-day afternoon event. But we're also looking to take it to other locations as well. We'll almost certainly be visiting Dublin with the kind of revised version of the student conference, as we've had a very kind offer of welcome from University College Dublin. And then we'll also be looking to take it somewhere else, kind of in the north of England or in Scotland, depending on kind of the availability of rooms and who's willing to have us host us. We're hopefully reaching kind of a greater portion of the DPC membership and future digital preservation practitioners.
Shall I move on to talk about the next point then, which is the Executive Briefing Pack Working Group. Advocacy is something that keeps sort of bubbling up in a lot of the discussion strands that we heard this year and in previous years as well, and something that we thought might be useful and has been on the work plan for a while actually for members would be what we previously called the Executive Briefing Pack. So you had probably heard about this earlier in the year when we teamed up with UNESCO to make sure that it would be sort of as widely useful and usable as possible, but essentially it would be a set of customizable resources to help share the message about digital preservation and its importance to senior members of an organisation so that policies and procedures can be put in place correctly. So UNESCO have been away gathering requirements from the member nations for the last month or so, and we've had some positive feedback on the structure and proposed content from the Persist Policy Working Group. So we're actually almost ready to start creating and gathering the content that will be available for use now. So at Connecting the Bits, in fact, and actually as part of the discussion on resourcing and cost savings, it kind of went off in this kind of direction. It was a bit of a tangent, but it was a good one anyway. I was offered the help of a couple of volunteers to put together some of this content for particular organisation types, sectors, I suppose. So very soon, possibly next week, I think, we're going to be asking for some more volunteers to join a working group to start creating the executive guide, as we're now calling it, the content for the executive guide. And the draft is due for completion by September, and the the final thing, in whatever shape it sort of comes out of this process, to be available by the end of the year. So that's, I mean, it's kind of, as I said, it's been on the work plan for a while, but it's exciting that it's starting to kind of come to a point where we can get together, and as William mentioned before, the DPC 2.0 being a sort of a conduit for information, knowledge, expertise. We want to kind of harness that and ask the members to kind of to own this resource and populate it with the very best information that they can offer. So that's the plan for that. Moving on. Big news. You will have spotted as well that we've got the Digital Preservation Awards on the agenda for this year, and it says on tour ! Because this year the ceremony will take place in Amsterdam, kindly hosted by Amsterdam Museum and with the Digital Heritage Network in the Netherlands. So that's very exciting. At the moment, the awards are open for nominations until July the 30th. So please, if you have a project or you know a person or a project that you think would be eligible to be nominated, then do give them a nudge. There's just over a month to get nominations in. We've already had a few, so that's very exciting. And this will all take place, it will culminate rather, on World Digital Preservation Day, previously International Digital Preservation Day, but we've rebranded a little, and that will take place on the 29th of November. And we will also, the same day, we're not giving ourselves much to do, but we will re-edit, or we will refresh the bit list, and that will be republished on the same day. So we're not going through the whole process asking for nominations to the bit list again, because this was always an activity that was designed to take place in between the awards years. So this is an awards year, so we will simply look at the nominations we received last year, see whether there's any kind of movement up and down the scale that we can update, and then we will republish that on World Digital Preservation Day. So that's all that's new in 2018-2019. William, do you want to move on to the next?
I wanted to say a word about the international DPC. There is a growing DPC membership. It's a real fun thing to celebrate. It presents its challenges on also though, and we just want to reflect on the sort of ways we're adapting, and over the next year we'll continue to adapt to reflect those changes that are necessary, I think, in our international development. The first thing to note is that the Connecting the Bits Unconference, we launched our inclusion and diversity policy. Fairly important thing to say out loud. The DPC has always been a friendly community. We want it to remain that way, and it's easy to do in the simple sense, but it's also really hard to do as the community continues to grow. So we've written down a few ideas as to what that should be like, and that's going to form, therefore, a kind of a basic framework for us to continue our international development and growth. To note that DPC scholarships are available now to support international travel. For career development, it might be for training, it might be for a conference, but we're making those funds available so that the community can grow internationally and to be connected. So don't hold back, members, in terms of your interest in acquiring funds or leaning on us to help that career development. An example of that is going to be the Digital Preservation Anonymous. So we've run it locally a couple of times, but it's time to take that on the road. So we're looking to see if we can book a room in or around IPRES, for example, and if we can organise the Digital Preservation Anonymous in the US on the fringes of IPRES, we'll be very happy. We might or might not manage that at IPRES, but that's exactly the kind of thing we're going to attempt to do. In that context as well, remember the international DPC, we've already begun a lot of our work around webcasting, the training, trying to deliver training online making more use of our video conferencing network to allow member drop-in surgeries, and of course the return to the web archiving webinars, the webinar program with web archiving, also working with our Dutch colleagues in spring, and the return to the Digital Preservation Futures webinar series in summer 2009. So the DPC grows as an international organisation, and our methods and our kind of corporate existence changes as we go. And if I may as well, it seems to me particularly important that the DPC presents an international outward-looking face at this particular time. 2019 will be a significant moment in the history of, the UK's relationship with the rest of the world. And I think it's important for us to be constantly stating our openness and our engagement with the rest of the world, whatever else might be happening in political terms. So that is the DPC as an international organisation. I'll keep going, but I think Sarah, it's back to you for this
me
next
again.
slide. Yeah.
Yes. So you might notice that this is a picture of the DPC members, and I'm going to talk about the DPC supporters, but I think that's fine, because it's about how we want to enable more, better, different perhaps engagement between the supporters and the members. So most of you will probably know that the supporter program is still relatively new, and so this is something that we want to continue to develop. Digital Preservation Futures, for example, that was the first time we'd run an event like that. But I think from all the feedback we've got, it was a huge success. We got great feedback from the supporters and from members too. Since then, we've heard from the supporters again last week with some of their plans for the coming months and the year. And we want to maintain that momentum. We want to continue to hear what the supporters are doing and what their ideas are, and to provide opportunities to collaborate rather than it just being a one-off kind of thing that happens at the end of our year. So we've already been talking to some of the supporters about other things that we can do. So you'll certainly be hearing more from them. We're thinking about ways to help you trial their products, for example, where appropriate, we will circulate outcomes of DPC events or working parties for their input and feedback. We'll be hearing more from them on the blog, and we'll certainly be doing the Digital Preservation Futures series of events and webinars again. But really what the message is here, that there was such a positive outcome from this little process of engagement that's taken place over the last month, that we want to continue and build on that to make sure that we get the best for supporters and for the members too. I think that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, back to me, in case you were wondering what I looked like. What's next? Okay, so fairly immediate actions for us then. We're going to produce that list of events in a nice, neatly formed document. It's going to come out, the new Digital Preservation Coalition prospectus. That's, I think, probably about a week away, maybe slightly less even. So we'll be sending that round to everyone. As mentioned already, the new project, this work with the Nuclear Decommissioning Authority, that's really well underway now. It allows us to appoint a new member of staff. So if you are interested or you know someone, please draw that to to their attention, because we want a really great set of candidates. This will be a leading role within the digital preservation community around the world, and we really want a great set of candidates for that. Obviously, Sarah's already mentioned the busy time that's going to come September, October, around the Preservation Awards, around World Digital Preservation Day, also around the bit list, all heading towards that last Thursday in November, the 29th of November this year, which will be World Digital Preservation Day. And finally, to note, as some of you will have heard today, a proper official announcement that the DPC is delighted to have been selected to host iPres in 2022. Seems like an awfully long way away, but you're all welcome to come and join us in Glasgow for what will be a super few days of digital preservation goodness. Also to celebrate the 20th, what will then be the 20th anniversary of the founding of the DPC. So, it might look like an awfully long time away, but believe you me, we're busily started the work on that already and preparing the way for a really great celebration of digital preservation and all its outputs and all its challenges and all its community for you all in 4 years' time in Glasgow. That, I think, is that. I'm going to pause for a moment and ask Sarah and Sharon if there's anything important that we've missed that's occurred to you while we've been speaking.
Nothing that's occurred, but I'm sure we'll think of something as soon as we we hang up the call. Perhaps we should invite people on the webinar if there are any thoughts, questions, things that they think we've missed, or suggestions.
Hi, this is Elizabeth here. Not, kind of that, but kind of a comment just because we weren't able to send anyone from University Arts for the actual members conference. And as new members, we really felt like we were missing out. But so this has been really helpful for me to then kind of report back to the powers that be that there's so much coming that we can be kind of a part of. So although we missed one event, there's obviously a lot going on that we can benefit from, and it's exciting. So
absolutely. No, we're very glad to hear that. Absolutely, and that's kind of why we tried to make it as accessible and available as possible, because I mean we know that the coalition is growing. We've got more members, obviously, than ever, and members are spread all over the world. But even if they weren't, even if everybody was sort of within a train ride away, we know that not everybody would be able to make it anyway. So I'm glad to hear that the kind of the mechanisms that we've been trying and the trialing this time have been effective. So thank you for that good feedback. I think we might have got away with it, everybody.
My only question, Elizabeth, again,
was go on.
So it was International Digital Preservation Day.
Yeah.
And now it's World Digital Preservation Day. What was a bit of a rebrand?
I'll take the blame for this one, if I may. So it turns I'll take the bullet. It turns out, Elizabeth, that there is an International Disabled Persons Day, IDPD, and it turns out that is the first week in December. And so what happened?
The 1st of December, no less.
Is it in fact
which was the day after International
Yeah.
Digital Preservation Day last year. It was a bit too close. It was, a bit of a hashtag disaster.
Yeah. So we put a W in for the avoidance of doubt. We've also stuck on the Thursday rather than sticking on the 30th of November, if you see what I mean. By sticking that day, we also create a wee bit of space in case the two things get kind of collide. But if you don't mind, everyone, please recalibrate. Let's make it World Digital Preservation, WDPD, rather than IDPD, so we can avoid that clash. I'll take the blame for that one. Well, it's
Great.
gone quiet at this
I was going to say, I think...
Sorry, go Sarah, yeah.
No, that was exactly what I was going to say.
I'm always anxious that the silence represents, another network bandwidth failure on my part. But I mean, Adam, you were there. I hope you find that to be an honest account, reflecting on the concerns and the issues that you observed people bringing to the table. Matthew, you were also there very much for the DP Futures. I hope you feel that that's an adequate reflection and response to all the things we've discussed last week. A response here from Anne. Great day, good to see the programme, which looks to be a good response. That's super. The DPC is member-owned, it's member-run, it's member-focused, and this process is really important to us to keep that focus in mind. Sarah, there's our usual routine at the end of these calls, and I think we're heading to the end, to say a word about what is next obviously my slide there saying what's next, but actually what's next is Monday, isn't it? Do you want to say a word about what's happening Monday and then on Tuesday with our repository migration event and our DP Anonymous?
Sure, I can do. So Monday evening, in a new kind of trial format, a select and anonymous group of digital preservationists will be meeting in New York somewhere, and we'll be discussing challenges, things that have gone wrong, things that they need help with, and the group will rally to provide advice and guidance. So that's kind of as a prelude to the following day's briefing day. So long and thanks for all the bits, and that's about migrating your data between repositories, and a number of our supporters will be there too to talk about exit strategies.
Are there still places available?
I don't think so. No, I think the last one's been taken.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that will be recorded and made available to those who can't make it in person. And I guess we'll do the usual kind of circulating of presentations as well. Also to note that the webinar mini-series that we've been hosting with the Software Preservation Network will conclude on the 11th and 18th of July, talking about legal possibilities for software preservation. And that will touch on copyright and fair use in the US, and licensing issues as well. So we've already, that's open for registration. There are still places available for that. We've had a great response to that entire series. And I heard well, it wasn't even a trail. It should have been a trail. We should have recorded it. The preparatory webinar with the speakers for that, and the conversation was fantastic. So I think that will be a really good one to join in. So watch out for a reminder about how to sign up for that. Well, that's it from me.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah. I'm going to pause and invite any last comments or questions. I see a message from Adam on my chat box to say the advocacy event in 2019 particularly appeals his efforts to advocate on campus and especially to IT very much in frame this year, so that will help.
Great.
Let me end then. Let's bring things to a close. Let me bring things to a close by just thanking you, Sarah. You've done all the legwork around these webinars in particular, not to mention a huge amount of work around the DP Futures and the connecting the bits. So thank you very much, Sarah, for your efforts. It's been a great experience. I think this is the best set of events like this we've run, member and supporter consultation, helping frame the next 12 months and more for the DPC. So really great community engagement, really great community also to be working with. Thank you all very much, and we'll hopefully see you all in York, if not in the unnamed pub, but in the degree rooms for our migration event on Tuesday. Thank you all very much.